Alternatives available to the council this evening include approving a one-year time extension, denying the time extension altogether, and direct staff as appropriate. Staff does recommend that the council approve a 2-year time extension. That will be extension number 4 for Mayor Villa Capri. This concludes the staff report. A representative of the applicant is here if you have any questions as well. Thank you.
No questions? No? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing, and we'll start with the applicant. We do have a request to speak as well. Marvin Roos.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're here again. Economic conditions for commercial have continued to be flat. We've also been waiting for the city's new mixed-use, multi-use to see if this would change the dynamics of the project. We still think it's a good project. Originally, this was going to be a super Walmart grocery store for the anchor, and the economy basically took the legs out. So we've been cooperative. Tim will tell you that we've paid up our share of the landscape median on Fred Waring, and dedicated land as needed at no cost to the city. So we hope we can continue to be cooperative and have another 2 years to try to get this together. Thank you.
Question.
Questions?
Yes, please.
We've seen other commercial development going on in the city. What has been the issue with this project?
I think probably the selected mix probably, you know, was the grocery stores are not real strong right now. And this was kind of based around that. When Walmart pulled out, haven't found anybody to go back in yet. Ralph's didn't seem to be interested, I guess. But that's all I know, actually.
Other questions? I have a question. Do we have any concerns over the students walking to school with it being kind of no real sidewalk or asphalt? When we did the walk with the mayor, we were traipsing through dirt to get up to where the car wash and kidney center and Colonel Mitchell Page.
Don't fight it.
Yeah, well, it is a concern, and there is quite a bit of pedestrian traffic in the area, and it would be great to have the sidewalks in. The problem is trying to build them and not have them, you know, be thrown away as soon as the project goes forward is the real issue there.
If I could add to it, I think also from the standpoint of the students, Mitchell Page, they're not usually utilizing that segment of Washington or Fred Waring. The south side of Fred Waring does have sidewalk, as well as, you know, the signalized intersection at Palm Royale provides a safe means of crossing, and then there are sidewalks on Palm Royale. So there is the ability for there to be a safe access. It's just that if they wanted to use the convenience, or others in the community want to use the convenience of the fronting of this property, obviously there's going to be that challenge.
No other questions?
Thank you.
Any comments?
Actually, I have a question. Do you see anything changing in the next 2 years? Do you have something in the pipeline right now that gives you indication that perhaps in the next 2 years, is this the last extension?
Well, we're trying to come up with a right project for the area. It's, you know, with what's been happening at the tennis gardens across the street, finished up, or almost finished up with Center Point. Got a lot of that taken care of. A lot of this has to do with rooftops, and just people, the retailers seeing new rooftops in an area. And I'm not sure that there's been a lot of new rooftops lately. So it's still, you know, we're hoping that it does it in this 2-year period, but I'm not saying that I might not be back here. Well, I won't be back here in 2 years, but somebody will. Hopefully we'll come back with slight modifications of the project and then go back that way. So that's our hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a new sign on the property. Yeah. There's a new sign. Okay, if there are no other comments, this is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and the matters before the council.
Ready for motion or no?
Yes, I will make a motion to adopt a resolution approving a fourth-time extension to conditional use permit 2015-0001 and site development permit 2015-0001.
Second.
There's a motion and second, please vote.
Okay.
Motion passes 4-0 with Councilmember Osborne recusing himself. Conflict of interest. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our next public hearing item. Adopt a resolution for mitigated declaration of environmental impact and associated mitigation monitoring program for environmental assessment, specific plan, tentative parcel map, tentative track map, and site development permit for development of 78 single-family homes on 39.8 acres located on the south side of Avenue 54, 1/4 mile east of Madison Street. Welcome back. Staff report.
Yes. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the Commission. Project before you tonight is a 78-lot subdivision of the former Griffin Ranch estate. Project area map is shown before you. It's at a 1/4 mile east of Madison Street on the south side of Avenue 54. As stated, the property was originally developed as a residential and equestrian compound for the late Merv Griffin. The project components are to have the existing estate remain as a luxury rental and event venue. The remaining acreage will be subdivided into 78 lots, and the project does incorporate a 6-acre lake which will have multiple functions for drainage purposes, a recreational amenity, and for irrigation of all the landscaping in the project. This illustration of the current project site with the estate, the former horse track, and some of the other grounds. Some of the site photos are shown of the property provided to give an idea of where, what improvements exist on the site. The proposed site plan shows the illustration of the 6-acre lake design with the 78 lots oriented around that to the to the north and to the west and east. The project to be developed requires multiple approvals for a specific plan, tentative parcel map, tentative track map, and site development permit. The project, as stated, provides for 78 lots with 4 house plans ranging from 3,025 to 3,680 square feet and 10,000 square foot minimum lots. Most of the current outbuildings that are on the estate parcel will be retained. However, the paddock and stables will be renovated into a 3,600 square foot community building for the use of the residential lots. The existing 2.1 acre pond will be expanded to the 6-acre lake. That current pond is on well water sourced, and the new lake will be sourced through canal water, which is non-potable. Staff, as part of the specific plan analysis, had the applicant prepare information relative to the lake to try to analyze what the impacts of it would be. These figures are from the original specific plan, and the applicant has been working to provide more detailed data and will be presenting that as part of his presentation. But based on the specific plan data, the project will use more water than an 88-lot subdivision, at least in terms of the analysis relative to the specific plan data, but will conserve significantly more of the potable water, which is the edict of the governor's executive order. The next slide represents the track map layout showing the facilities and improvements to be provided. The project, the 4 floor plan elevations are illustrated here. All the units are single-story except for Plan 1 does have a two-story option for an approximate 365 square foot bonus room. The recreation building is the remodeled, renovated paddock and stables that will be turned into the community building of 3,600 square feet. Staff's review of the project in terms of the specific plan, standards of the specific plan, generally are compatible with the surrounding Griffin Ranch specific plan, which is on all three sides of the property to the south, east, and west. The tentative maps are consistent with the specific plan as conditioned and as proposed, and the site development permit improvements are consistent with, in terms of architecture and design, with the Griffin Ranch project and compatible for the site. The Planning Commission did review this project on April 14th. Staff had recommended that the project be continued to further study the issues related to water and the state's executive order relative to its impact upon the Coachella Valley Water District. As part of the review, the Planning Commission did express concern over the lack of information that we had available from CVWD as to the lake design and their support of it. Costs associated with maintaining the lake that the HOA might incur, and lack of more specific information on the alternative 88-lot design that was cited in the water budget calculations. Commission did make a motion to continue, but that failed on a 2-3 vote. With additional discussion with the applicant, led to an approval recommendation on a 3-2 vote. Staff has met with the applicant and been advised of some of the new information that will be presented to you as part of their presentation. The staff does recommend adoption of a council resolution to approve the project based on Planning Commission recommendation. As I said, the applicant does have a presentation that they will be preparing after the staff report and any questions you have of staff. We have also prepared a condition pertaining to the impact of the project relative to any future actions by the State Water Board, and those impacts on CVWD is to be sure that this project complies with those actions should some additional mandates come down. That would conclude the staff report, and we're available for any questions you have this time.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Want to start, Robert?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question regard to staff report, page 331. Concern was voiced that there was no written verification from CVWD to substantiate applicant's claim the CVWD had approved the lake design. Has that changed?
We do not have anything official from Coachella Valley Water District specifically addressing the lake design. What has been provided back to us is a review of the overall irrigation plan, which the lake is included within that. But again, there's nothing definitive and specific regarding the lake design and the response back. It's a general acknowledgement and acceptance of the overall concept of utilizing a non-potable water source as well as the proposed irrigation plan associated with that.
So we don't have a letter from CVWD saying, yes, we do approve this lake, we do approve this body of water.
Correct. We don't have anything definitively saying that at this time. But I know that we do have a representative, obviously, from the Water District here this evening to address that.
I would like to ask an hypothetical question, if I may. If the water was to be diverted by CVWD, it's Colorado water, and we know this is not potable water, but eventually it becomes potable water, right, through recharging the aquifer. If at one point, because we are, the reason I'm asking, we are in a very dynamic situation here with these executive orders coming down and our governor trying to play catch up here to a drought that's been going on for some time. What happens if, by any chance, hypothetically, CVWD has to divert the water and the lake dries up? What are our responsibilities as a city if that happens? And I may even ask our city attorney about that.
Well, excuse me. I do believe a member from CVWD is here to probably address that more than I can on the specifics. As far as if they're under the current executive order or a future executive order that may require a diversion of water that is to be allocated, if it follows the current executive order structure and what the state water board must do, the water providers, or what are defined as the urban water suppliers, would be responsible for implementing and enforcing those requirements. The city of La Quinta is not, as defined, a urban water supplier. That's CVWD. So if there is something in the future that would require, if the governor or the state were to require some diversion, that would most likely, again, go through CVWD as the body that would be responsible for making determinations on how that is to be done. Now, specifically to the question of how it may impact the city and its uses, the city is what's defined in these proposed regulations as an end user, just like other people who use potable water. And if there is a requirement to reduce that in addition to what has already been proposed, then the city would need to comply with that. Does that answer your question?
But to further identify the city, shouldn't we have a letter or some sort of document from CVWD saying, yes, that's exactly what we want, that's exactly, as we saw in the previous presentation, it seems like it's part of their plan. Shouldn't we have some sort of written document that tells us, yes, approve this, we give the blessing?
Sure. I think I heard two issues there. One dealing with indemnification, the other dealing with just a letter, a letter that CVWD approves this project. The latter is certainly, I suppose, up to CVWD and would make, would be part of the official record as to their support to this project. As far as indemnification is concerned between the city and CVWD, that would likely need to be the subject of a separate negotiation.
Thank you.
Questions of staff? Christy, you want to wait?
I want to wait, yes.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and we will open.
A few questions.
You have a few? Okay.
Questions, Wally, in regards to the egress and access to this property, I noticed no decel lane in access to this property. And I understand within the Planning Commission that you guys did your study to say, based on the traffic counts, it's not warranted. Is that correct?
Yeah, the traffic study, we did have them do a traffic study. Tim could speak to more detail on it, but it did not warrant the improvement of a decel lane.
Now, Tim, in regards to the traffic study that you guys reviewed, my concern is that the way I see this development, it looks more from a winter visitor standpoint. Mm-hmm. So obviously the traffic count from January through March, April is going to be substantially different than the rest part of the year. Right. Did the study look at all 12 months, or was there, a maximum time of traffic counts that you looked at?
We seasonally adjust it based on to whenever the study's done to bring it to when we would expect the maximum, which would be during the winter. The original design, just so you're aware, only had one entrance, and that was one of our concerns was, how are all these people going to get in for if there's events or something like that, as well as the residents that need to get to their homes, and that's kind of how we arrived at the design, or the developer arrived at the design, where they're kind of splitting the resident traffic off from which would be the entrance down towards the east end of the project. There would be the residents would have some sort of a transponder, I believe, there, whereas the main entrance would be for events at the Griffin property, but the residents could come in that way also, but they wouldn't have to go in that way.
Then, okay, and the next question, in regards to the irrigation plan and the use of this non-potable for irrigation purposes, based on the calculation of the water necessary for their irrigation plan, I mean, in relations to the size of this lake and in relations to the necessary water for the irrigation plan, do we need a lake that big for this irrigation plan?
If I could, and certainly the applicant, I'm sure will be prepared to respond even further on this, but the lake is serving three purposes. It's serving as a holding area for irrigation needs. It's also serving as their retention as well. So there's the size of that allows for obviously the ability to accommodate a 100-year storm event, and the third option that they've identified is a recreational element to it. So it really is serving multiple purposes versus just for irrigation, because that question was asked, and certainly there's more water there than needed just to irrigate those 78 homes and the existing estate. But again, it's for the purpose of also addressing stormwater events for retention purposes, and also the recreational amenity component.
Okay, because I'm looking at the site and looking at the setbacks being requested, the 5 foot or 7 foot, the 10 foot. I mean, I don't know that how much irrigation is really going to be needed for this plan, other than potentially, you know, the conference center or that area where you're going to have events. There's much more grass there, turf there that will need obviously the irrigation. But the 78 units, I don't know how much is going to actually be needed on those 78 units. And then I would imagine any faucets coming on the outside of the house have to be potable water. Is that correct?
Well, they're going to dual pipe the system to where you'll have the potable water for the interior use, and then they'll actually have a separate piping system for all of the irrigation needs for the units.
So they'll have a faucet outside the house?
The applicant will probably be able to respond to the details on that, but they have not discussed that with us yet as to exactly how that would occur if there were exterior taps, if you will, or faucets. But I do know that all of the general irrigation with each of the individual homes, all the common area irrigation as well as the existing estate will all be from the non-potable water source. They've also provided with all of the 78 homes a very desert-scape design.
Right.
So there's minimal turf being utilized throughout the project.
I didn't see that much land to be irrigated.
Correct.
Per se, for the need of that size of a lake. Oh, give me just a minute. I have some others. Madam Mayor, that's all I have at this time. I'll find my other questions here.
With that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and we would like to hear from the applicant first. We have several requests to speak as well.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Paul DePilatus, and I'm the planning director for MSA Consulting, and here to represent the project for you tonight. Also with me, just so you know, we brought our design team with us to be able to answer any technical questions you have, but we have Mark Major, the applicant, is here, Greg Basola, the project architect, Rick McGuire, our lake designer, Rodney Reed, our civil engineer, Ron Gregory, our landscape architect, and Michael Titus, the applicant's land use counsel. How do I move the slides? Just tell you? Point?
You want yours up, right?
Yes.
Especially when you get switched back.
Okay, just to recap, staff has already mentioned that this is the Griffin Estate, which is located kind of as a notch in the Griffin Ranch project. That's about roughly under 40 acres when you subtract the right-of-way for the street. Some of the existing features there, just to revisit them again, you have the main estate building, corrals that were used for horses, an existing 2.2 acre lake, the existing stables, corrals, and then a horse track that previously was planted with alfalfa for growing for the animals. That is currently fallow and has been so for a couple of years now since the current owner has it. And all of this was irrigated from a well, private well on the property. The project itself has four main components. The first one is to preserve the estate, which is being left as it was to maintain the character of that facility for events. The stables that were on the property have been converted to be part of the clubhouse facility for the residents. Then there are about 78, roughly 10,000 square foot lots. The 10,000 square foot apply to the square lots. When you get into the corners and knuckles and things like that, the sizes go up to 11 to 13,000. So it's kind of a mix, but the minimum is 10,000. This project uses slightly more water than the current estate does. It's irrigated 100% with non-potable canal water, and it reuses storm water for irrigation. I want to take just a little bit of time to talk about the lake because right now, obviously, the governor's order came at a little bit of a difficult time for this project in that we're sort of fighting public perception on a lake like this. For our purposes, this issue of water conservation is not new, and it's not new to CVWD. We've been working on this for a couple of years with them. So the design before you is, and even the governor's order, was not something that caught us by surprise. We've been kind of working toward trying to find a water-efficient model project for some time. So just to go into a little bit of detail about how this came about. First of all, we noticed that we were adjacent to Avenue 54, which contained both a potable water line and an irrigation line for the canal. So we saw that there was an opportunity to do three things with the water on this property. The first was to eliminate reliance on the existing well, that is to take it off of there and put it onto a system of some kind, to repurpose the pond as a multi-use water system, and to capture that readily available canal water for irrigation that was right next to the property. So if I can kind of go into the four different benefits or uses of the lake. The first one is, as was mentioned, an irrigation reservoir for irrigating the project. Now, it's important to note that you can't actually use the canal water unless you have a reservoir of some kind, because whereas a domestic water line is under pressure from a reservoir of some kind in the hills, typically they're at about 60 pounds per square inch. The canal line is actually between 3 and 5 pounds per square inch, so you can't actually use it to force it into a system because it's not pressurized enough. So part of the purpose of the lake is to actually be a reservoir for that canal water to come into, collect, and then to pump it at pressure into the irrigation system for the project. So without the lake, you can't use the canal water, so you have to have something there of some kind. The second thing it does is that as the canal water is delivered to the valley, part of it is open, part of it is in pipes, but it picks up dusts and sediments as it's carried along. If you don't have a place for those to settle out, what will happen is that if you put that directly into an irrigation system, it will quickly clog the emitter nozzles and make the system unusable. So you need to have a settling area where those can come out of the water before you pump it into the system. So the lake serves those two purposes, and without it, again, you could not take advantage of that canal water. The second thing that the lake does is that it also acts as our retention basin. And you'll notice that in addition to the water itself, which would be at a normal level with the refilling from the canal, there's also extra area built in for, should there be a storm, for that to collect and go on top of that without it actually affecting the lots. It's kind of a unique situation here because there have been some other projects where we as a company have tried to do this concept. For example, the Annenberg Estate wanted to put in a retention basin and use that to collect stormwater and then use it for irrigation. But the problem there was that it really was not cost effective given the costs of infrastructure extensions and things versus just connecting into the potable water supply. So they opted not to do that. Golf courses as well cannot do this because, as you know, when water falls on a golf course, it simply percolates. You can't collect it in any way. There's no hardscape to channel it into a facility. So by virtue of the fact that we have streets, lots, roofs, things like that, we're able to actually channel that water into this retention basin and then following the rain, we would be able to pump that and offset additional water use. Now, granted, that happens only occasionally, but it is something, and it is something we're trying to find all the water we can these days. So that is a way that this can again capture additional water that wouldn't be otherwise available. So really, it's kind of a unique situation here. By virtue of the fact that we have the canal water next to us, we can use that as our primary source of irrigation, secondarily capture the stormwater. It provides a unique opportunity to use this for irrigation. The other purpose that the lake serves are really more land use purposes. And we've designed this in a way where we have one use going on with the events at the estate, and then we have, the residential units going on somewhat next to that. So we've used it both as a horizontal barrier between the estate and the homes, but also as a vertical barrier. If you look at the way this is designed, you'll see that next to the estate there's an upper lake, and then the balance of the lake is a lower lake next to the residences. When you're at the estate, that will sort of function as kind of as an infinity pool almost, because you'll be looking out across this higher lake and not see much of the residential development because of that, so you'll see it feel somewhat isolated up there. On the other side of that, when you're looking at that facility from the lower lots, what you'll see is a waterfall with rock features there. So again, that will function as a buffer where you'll see that from viewing the estate. So we've tried to use this as kind of a buffering tool, as a land use tool between the different uses. And then fourthly, it serves as a recreation amenity. If we're going to use water, we should use it for every possible way we can. And we felt that using the lake for electric boating and also making it accessible to all of the lots along it so that they could actually access the lake from those lots was an important part of the function of the lake. So, those four purposes are really what this accomplishes. And in part, the size of the lake is somewhat determined by the fact that we are not just digging a hole, putting a fence around it, and letting it slope, however it wants to. We're trying to make this at an elevation which actually can be used by the residences. So consequently, the size and the elevations accommodate the irrigation, the stormwater, and then the recreation accessibility within the project. As far as size of the lake goes, we originally came up with a 6-acre number, really based on a property line was established around the entire lake facility. But given the scrutiny on this, we actually went back and re-looked at those acreages a little further and saw that there were actually several pieces to that. The first one is the lake surface itself was actually about 4.7 acres, not 6. And then you've got the kind of the freeboard around the edge of that lake, which catches that stormwater, which is another 0.9 acres. And then other features such as docks and the island feature, which contribute another 0.4 acres. So the actual lake size of 4.7 acres is actually just slightly more than 2 times the size of the existing 2.2-acre lake, not 3 times as might have been implied before. So that is a little more detail on the sizing. On this exhibit, there's a cross-section, which is also in the specific plan that was given to you, and it sort of shows the relationship between the lake surface and the lots adjacent to it. I'd like to have Ron Gregory come up for just a minute and talk about this project based on his experience with landscape design in the desert and how he would perceive this project.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name's Ron Gregory. Excuse me, I'm with RGA Landscape Architects. We've had our office in the desert since 1977, and we've done several thousand projects in the desert. This for us is a treat in a way because the timing of the project is such that for the last few years, when we've all been trying very hard to come up with water efficient designs, we've had to come up with an especially water-efficient design since the governor's mandate. We have done so. The plant material used on this project is calculated along with the evapotranspiration from the lake, and it does calculate. It does work out. And the reason why it does work out is because we've used especially low water factor plants. And so we have done this once before on a project that was not built for the West Valley campus of College of the Desert. In that case, as with this one, we are using a lot of native type plants. They're extremely sustainable. They can go for quite a while without water. And this is, for us, a unique opportunity to get a really serious landscape going here. The calculations that we prepared have been run through CVWD, and they have been checked off by them to work. So if you have any questions that I can answer, I'm here.
Yes.
Have you calculated the amount of water needed to irrigate your landscape plan?
Yes.
And how much of that is as a percentage of the size of the lake?
You know, I personally can't answer that. I'm wondering if that's something that Rick might be able to answer better. It's in our calculations, which one of the gentlemen in my office prepared. I personally don't do that. It's too hard. But I understand your question, and it's probably in our calculations.
Is there someone that can't answer that that's here?
Well, maybe if I get the calcs myself and go over it, I can see what that answer might be for you.
This young man looks like he's ready to.
Oh, great, thanks, Mark.
Sorry to jump around. The calculations for what you're asking for are included in our presentation.
That you're going to give us in a bit.
Well, it's part of the general presentation, but we're going to have some of our team in the back start calculating what you're asking for right now.
Okay, so, thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't help you with that. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, if I may ask, since we're doing calculation, what about evaporation from this body of water? Natural evaporation through summer, to the hot months. What happened to that?
That's significant, and that's part of our calculations that we are discussing right now. That has to be included in the landscape calculations. That's considered part of the landscape. So the reason we're using such water-efficient plants is to help make up for the evaporation that we understand and know will be coming from the water, from the lake. It's the same thing as with swimming pools. CVWD has a water use factor for every different type of situation, like lawn, for example, has a factor. Standing water has a factor. Moving water has a factor. So these are all the items required by state assembly bill.
And standing water evaporates faster than moving water?
No, moving water will evaporate faster.
Okay.
Yes.
50-50 chance. Any other questions of Ron while Paul continues the presentation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
I wanted to look at a couple of different development scenarios to put the project in context. The first one is to look at the existing estate. And, you know, actually, after the Planning Commission hearing, we sort of realized that actually, when we look at the property, we're not looking at a zero water consumption on the property right now. The estate itself actually uses a fair amount of water for just irrigating the grounds there in the estate itself. But so we wanted to kind of compare the project with this scenario, and just a few things about that. The estate currently uses about 23.7 million gallons per year based on metered water bills over the last 2 years. Prior to that, the well was not actually metered, but when the current owner purchased it, meters were put on it, and they have actually monthly water numbers for the last 2 years. So this 23.7 is an actual number from the water that's currently being used on that facility. This is irrigated 100% with potable water from the aquifer. And probably historic use was higher because in the middle of the racetrack, alfalfa was planted, and that's a very high water use crop, and likely in the past, the water use on this project was much higher because that's all fallow now. The second scenario we wanted to look at was what would happen if we took the lake away and we just did a standard traditional residential subdivision on the property. And in looking at that, by right, we're allowed about 4 units per acre, which would, if you calculated that out, be about 132 lots. But for comparison purposes, we just said, well, let's maintain the lot size and just use a 10,000 plus square foot lot and see what kind of lotting we could come up with. So the design to the right here is what we came up with for a typical residential subdivision that we could do under current rights with no lake. A few things about that. This uses 10,000 square foot lots as a target. It yields 88 lots, about 10 more than the project. This will use about 33.1 million gallons per year of water. Again, it's irrigated 100% with potable water from the CVWD domestic water system. It uses no canal water, and it uses no irrigation reuse of stormwater because there's no lake to capture that. So just to show this graphically, although the governor's order is concerned specifically with potable water use, we know in the public that there's a concern about total water, and so we wanted to start with a comparison of that. The first thing, and that's what this first slide shows, the first thing to note is that, as I mentioned, the current estate uses about 23.7 million gallons of water every year. So if you look at the 32.8 million gallons that our lake project uses, as compared to with the 33.1 million gallons that a non-lake project standard subdivision that would use, it's slightly less than that. And staff mentioned earlier, when we first did this analysis, we wanted to show a comparison, but we didn't really dig into as much detail as we have in the last few weeks. So these numbers are based off of, as Ron mentioned, calculations that would be done as though they were submitting a landscape plan to CVWD to determine what the allocation allowed is and what could be designed to based on that. These calculations were given to CVWD to review, and we're told that they are in fact accurate. And then thirdly, as was mentioned, these include not just the plants, but also the evaporation from the lake. So this water usage is based on basically the calculations that CVWD would see on a project. So anyway, as you're looking, what you see is that on the lake project, we only use about 27.6% more water than is currently being used on the estate. And a comparable project for just straight lots would use 28.4 million gallons per year. A little bit more than that, but roughly equivalent. So moving from there, we wanted to sort of say, okay, we've talked about total water. Now, how does that water break down in terms of its potable versus non-potable? And what this slide shows is that you'll see with the existing estate, because that comes out of a well, 100% of that is potable water. And likewise, for the 88 lot project, again, 100% potable water. There is no way to capture anything non-potable for that. But if you actually, and here's where the difference comes in with this project and why we think it's very unique, is that if you look at the percentages of potable versus non-potable, you'll see that we're only using 7.9 million acres of potable water from CVWD's system and the groundwater with this project. And the balance of it all comes from the canal, which is imported from non-potable, non-usable water for other things other than recharge. But the distinction between potable and non-potable is something that CVWD has been pursuing for some time, and dual pipe systems are something that is really what the model that they're shooting for. So we think we're actually a model project in that regard. So moving then to strictly potable water, again, if you look at the comparison on strictly potable water, you'll see that the current estate actually uses 66% more potable water than this project does. And likewise, an 88-unit standard subdivision would use 75% more potable water than this project would. So in light of the governor's mandate to reduce potable water, we think this is far, far superior to the other options. I'd like to take just a minute to kind of look at what's being shown in the media, I think, in terms of what they say the valley looks like. And you'll notice this was taken from a newspaper article you may have seen, but it's kind of taken in a place where it looks all green, pretty much. And I think for the standpoint of legacy projects in the valley, this is probably, you know, the norm many, many years ago for golf courses and whatnot. But as time has gone on, you know, CVWD has been very proactive in doing a number of things to change the way development looks and to make it much more sustainable, much more water efficient. And the things you don't see in the newspaper are projects like this. This is what a new golf course looks like under the current CVWD regulations. So you'll note the very small amount of green, the very large amount of desert scape, and you know, a very much more desert-friendly kind of a look to that facility. Likewise for residential. This is a project in Palm Desert that was actually being completed now. But you'll notice, again, very little turf, a lot of desert scape along the roads, You know, this is much more consistent with what we're seeing developed under current standards today. So just to recap, the benefits of this project are a number of things. First of all, it preserves the existing estate, which we know is important to the local community. It also incorporates the existing stable into the development and preserves that facility. And by the way, before it was bought by the current applicant, those were becoming very deteriorated, and they've been brought up since they've had a way to fund this and to make this something that can actually become something that will carry forward. On a revenue standpoint, the estate will generate TOT for the city and permit revenue fees on an ongoing basis. The applicant is also looking to promote an optional pool within the project where people could register with the city for vacation ownership rentals, and that way the city would be able to capture some revenue from the residential as well, as people would opt to go into that. And then there's also a very high quality architecture and design to this project. You know, the lake is sort of a signature project and something that differentiates it from the projects around it, but the architecture is very high quality. The landscaping around the entries is very attractive, and we think this is a very good project in terms of the image of La Quinta, and something that would be very well received by people buying it as well as the community. And then finally, as we mentioned, the reservoir portion of the project reduces both the total and the potable water use of the project as opposed to the other options. So, you know, really, in summary, this project is a choice between three alternatives. The first one is to do nothing and to let the current water use on the estate continue as it is, which is really benefiting it doesn't have any public benefit particularly. You know, there's no homes, there's no, you know, other than the current facility that's there. Much of the project is vacant. You could approve an 88-lot standard subdivision or more that's allowed by right in the zone in the general plan designation according to the city, which would use about the same amount of water that this does. Or you could approve this project, which includes a fairly innovative reservoir to capture non-potable water for irrigation. And we believe that the first two are not consistent with the governor's order, whereas the third one is. So we would request that you approve the project tonight. And as I mentioned, we have our panel of experts here if you have technical questions you need to have answered beyond what I've said tonight.
Thank you. Questions, applicant?
Thank you. I don't know who the pond or the reservoir, you want to call it, the lining on that, what type of lining is going to be on that to protect any leaks and holes within that?
I'm going to let our lake designer come up and answer that question for you.
My name is Rick McGuire. I'm a lake engineer. I've designed lakes here in the valley since 1976. So I've seen a lot. The lining material is a reinforced polyethylene, 100% watertight. It's covered with either concrete in places or soil in other places so that it extends the life of the liner for many, many, many years.
I'm concerned about how easy it would be to poke a hole in your liner.
And you know, I have a sample here that I'll show you. You can't push your pen through it. It's impossible. It is a dual layer of polyethylene with a nylon scrim in between. A nylon scrim is a woven nylon material that's about, maybe 1/8 to 1/4 inch apart. So it's impossible to penetrate with golf shoes or really anything that you would normally see in the lake.
Okay.
John?
Question. What's the difference between a lake and a pond?
Mark Twain had the answer for that. Mark Twain said that if you can throw a rock from one side to the other, it's a pond. And if you can't, it's a lake.
So that's the scientific definition.
That's all I know.
Okay.
Yeah, we can argue that.
How deep is this lake?
This lake is 12 foot in the deepest part.
Average depth?
8 or 9 feet.
Current pond?
The current pond is, I believe, 10 feet deep.
And is it lined?
It was lined back in the early 80s when it was built. Yes, sir.
Other questions of Rick?
Councilman Osborne had a question about the relationship between irrigation water volume yearly and the volume in the lake.
Yes.
The irrigation volume per year is 33.1 million gallons. The lake is 11 million gallons. So then the lake will turn over 3 times a year or once every 4 months, roughly.
So this irrigation system, as proposed, will use 33 million gallons a year?
Correct.
Thank you.
How does that compare to other water-dwelling residential communities?
Much less. A golf course may use 1.5 million gallons a day.
We're not building a golf course here.
I know that.
Okay.
I know that. But a project like that, where you have turf everywhere.
But we don't have turf everywhere here. It's mostly cement and water.
In this case, it is. That's right.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to keep it apples to apples. I don't want to compare this to a golf course because we're not building a golf course.
Yeah. The 33.1 is typical of this type of development. Very typical.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Any other questions? Okay. Other questions of Paul or his team at this time? Mark, do you have updated information on calculations of sorts?
Just wanted to answer Mr. Osborne's previous question regarding how much of the total non-potable water will be used to irrigate the front and rear yards.
Yes, sir.
So the answer to that is approximately 47% of total water use, or 11.5 million gallons.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one final comment. We felt it was better to have CVW here than to have something in writing, so we thought that that would be sufficient for them, for your questions to be answered. So if you need to call them up, feel free to do that.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing. We do have several requests to speak, so thank you, applicant, for providing that presentation and updated information. We'll continue with Lynn Rogers. Lynn, if you would come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, I'm Lynn Joy Rogers. I live at 79792 Desert Willow Street here in La Quinta. You know, I love La Quinta, but I have to tell you, if you approve this, it's irresponsible. We have a serious drought, and I got to tell you that CVWD is not really all that cognizant or willing to admit it. We have a serious drought. It's so serious that we may have to ration soon. It's not 25%, it's 36%. And we have been accused of using more water than anybody in the state. There have been articles in the New York Times on us that, you know, don't look very good. We've been on CNN showing all the swimming pools, all the waterfalls, and all this wonderful water in a desert. I don't know who would come to the desert to do water skiing in a lake. I think you really need to rethink this. I have some information here for you. We get our water from potable water and non-potable water. Non-potable water, it all comes from the same source. Potable water is drinkable, non-potable isn't. Non-potable we need we can use for laundry, we can use to wash cars, we can use for those kinds of things. But to fill a 6-acre lake, which represents 15% of the total acreage on that property, is irresponsible. That's all I have to say. I'm going to leave this with you.
Thank you, Lynn. Doug Hassett. Real quick, an applicant question. The recreational activities available on this lake, it looked like the previous slides are just electric boating. Will there be water skiing on this lake?
No, certainly not. It'll be left to, I'd say electric boating would be irregular for the most part, mainly paddle boating.
Paddle boating.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Doug.
My name is Doug Hassett, 54800 Avenida Rubio, La Quinta. Honorable Mayor and council members, it's a pleasure to be here. Councilman Ratty, I liked your comments about this dynamic situation we're in. I think our drought is very serious, and I think that there's a big what if out there, and I think that's what we're all really faced with, is the what if. I mean, what if we do have water that's diverted from our area and CVWD has to divert water elsewhere? I think we could end up with lots of issues concerning projects like this one with a lake. I think we could end up with the subsidence issues that we had numerous years ago that have been corrected because we're recharging our aquifer with Colorado River water. And I just think there's a lot to think about and a lot of science to look at and a lot of numbers to go over and over and over before we are really satisfied with the fact that we want to have another project that includes a lake. I think that we've really got some serious issues to look at before we go forward. That's it.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Michelle Patton. Yeah, it is. We need it. We need it.
Oh, good. I'm Michelle Patton, and I live at 54290 Avenida Martinez, and I've lived in La Quinta since 2002, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I love my city of La Quinta. I love my community. I love my city. I'm a Pillar of the Community recipient in 2010. A lot of and probably the primary reason why I did that or received that was because of all of my work up at the top of the cove, cleaning up poop and trash. So at any rate, I love my community. I am extremely concerned about water conservation. And I want my city to be forward-thinking. I want my city to be a leader in water conservation. I want us to be a model city. I want us to make the news because we're doing all the right things regarding conserving water. I think it's what we really need to do. We need to be stewards, and we need to be making the right decisions. I don't want us to make any embarrassing decisions that we will regret later. And so I really think at this time we need to reconsider a project that has a lake. I mean, you must be kidding. So I think we also need to take into consideration that there will be more things coming down from the state and from our governor. We just can't act hastily at this point. So I suggest caution at this point, extreme caution. We need to be extremely conservative.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for the work you do for the community. Katie Barrows? I saw Katie leave. Okay, Wolf?
K. Wolf, 77227 Calle Ensenada, and I'd like to say a few words about evaporation. The rate of evaporation is influenced by several factors, among them temperature, relative humidity, wind, solar radiation, and water temperature. The Coachella Valley ranks high on all of these factors. The greater the surface of the body of water, the more evaporation is going to occur. I tried to determine how much water would be lost to evaporation alone from a lake that is roughly, they just changed the numbers on me. I was calculating all afternoon on 6 acres, but so I'm going to stay with that, and we know it's changed. Calculating the amount of water that would be lost to evaporation on a lake that is roughly 4 acres larger than the existing rate. I went to the CVWD website, and I could find no information on evaporation rates from swimming pools, agricultural ponds, reservoirs, or lakes. But maybe I didn't look far enough, but I didn't find it. So it's not easy to get a handle on this important factor. So what do when we're lost? We Google. The city of Scottsdale has a table that estimates the water lost to evaporation from a 20 by 20 swimming pool or a 400 square foot pool, and the annual estimate is 6.5 feet per year, or nearly 20,000 gallons. Those are their figures. That's about the size of my little backyard pool, a fact that I'm embarrassed to know. And now CVWD is suggesting that I cover my pool to prevent evaporation, which is probably a really good idea. If Griffin Lakes has 78 homes with pools about this size, and this would be pretty small, and from the photo views that I saw, it looked like every house was planned to have a pool. Not sure, but that's the way it looked from what I saw. So if they have 78 homes with pools, the same size as my little one, that would be 1.56 million gallons of evaporation from the pools alone. That does not include the water for landscaping, as mentioned in the staff report as 25 million gallons. So how much water would be lost to evaporation on this 4-acre lake increase? Extrapolation is a little difficult, but let's try. It would take about 109 of my swimming pools to be an acre of land. So 4 new surface acres of lake would be a little over 436 of my little pools, or 8.72 million gallons per year. Add that to the swimming pool loss for the 78 homes, and you've got 10.28 million gallons. What could we do with over 10 million gallons of water a year? Grow crops, recharge the aquifer, save for a rainy day? If precious non-potable water from the shrinking Colorado River is going to be used, why not just pump it underground? And I didn't know about all the business of it has to settle out and all that. Why not go underground and use it directly for irrigation only? So if it does have to settle and all that, how big a lake does it take for settling for that number of homes that are going to use that little water? So do you need a 4.7 acre lake for that to settle out and to get the pressure? Or could it be smaller? Okay. Okay, they talked about the current rate of water being used. I'm not sure what the size was of that alfalfa field, but I'm sure that the amount of water quoted for being used included the alfalfa that is being watered by well water. Is that what we understood? A big alfalfa field? No.
23.7 million is only used today for the home and the pond and surrounding grass around the home. That is it.
Oh.
Alfalfa hasn't been there for 10
Oh,
years.
good. Oh, it hasn't been there for 10 years.
And that 23.7 million
Thank you.
number reflects.
Thank you. I feel better already. Okay. And as the lake, as a catch basin for a stormwater event, isn't the lake already full? So if we have another 100-year flood or 700-year flood, where's the extra water going to go? Are they have a dike around it for us to put our water in? Tim could probably answer that question. But anyway, if it's a full lake, how can we put more water in it when we have a big event? Seems to me like there ought to be some way to pump that underground water, and I think it's wonderful to use Colorado River water, if there's enough of it. And couldn't there be some kind of a pumping system like the ranchers use? So let's let the experts take some more time to do the calculation on the implications of evaporation alone. Let CBWD factor their estimates into the governor's order and see if they should not further evaluate the lakes, the water features, the pools, and into their approval criteria. Let's continue this item and give us all some more time so that we can get it right and set an example for the future. Sorry to run over time.
Thank you, Kay. And our last is Jeff Smith.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, my name is Jeff Smith. I live at 54631 Avenida Alvarado. And I'm speaking tonight as a representative of the Cove Neighborhood Association. We got together and discussed this, and we are recommending or are asking that a continuance be granted for the Griffin Lakes project. And you may be saying, well, you know, Cove Neighborhood Association, this isn't in the Cove. businesses of yours, what happens over there at Griffin Lakes. Well, of course, this is not just a local issue. It's not just the Cove, it's not just La Quinta, it's not just the Coachella Valley, it's not just California, it's the desert Southwest, it's the West. We are in a historical drought, and we need to be focusing on the conservation of our precious resource. We here in the desert, and I'm afraid La Quinta as well, have an image, both national and international, as frankly profligate wasters of water. And frankly, I think in many cases it's true. There was a whole different paradigm of how water was used for the last 30 years. The last 10 years, it's, we have made a serious, serious mistake. And of course, coming up with a project with a landscape feature recreational lake, and we can call it a retention basin and we can use irrigation. It's a recreational lake and a landscape feature is frankly not tenable in this historic drought that we're in right now. The other distinction that, of course, is just driving people crazy is this distinction between potable water that comes out of the aquifer and non-potable water that we're sucking out of the Colorado River. I'm sorry, the water in the Colorado River is falling fast. If you've taken a look at the levels of Lake Mead lately, you know that we're in serious, serious trouble, and it's not going to go away even if it starts raining for several more years. And I'm afraid it's probably not going to start raining. The state and CVWD are currently struggling with how to deal with this new reality, this new paradigm, and regulations are going to be coming at us fast and furiously. It is a dynamic situation, as Robert said. So what we think we need to do now is have a continuance on this project. Let's wait and see how things shake out with the state. Let's see how they shake out with the Coachella Valley Water District. Let's not act before new standards are established and have to redo or undo this project. We don't want to sneak it in under the door before these new regulations come down the way. For the sake of the image of our city, for one, and for the sake of having the most responsible water use possible, let's hold off, let's wait and see on this project. Let's have a continuation. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
a continuance. Thank you.
Thanks.
And lastly, apparently you lost my pink slip. My name is Chris English. I live at 77227 Ensenada. And thank you for letting me be here. And with all due respect, and no offense intended, may I speak freely? Thank you.
As long as you don't curse.
What were they thinking? What is the Planning Commission thinking? What is the staff thinking? I mean, the Commission recently approved the Griffin Lakes project with 78 homes. Only 23 or 4 of them are going to be on the lakefront. Pools and water features abundant. That sucks the water out from the atmosphere, from the aquifer. And what the worst thing is that they want to fill up a 7-acre lake with canal water, which comes from the Colorado River. When was the last time any of these gentlemen were at Lake Mead or Lake Powell? I can't believe it. The LA Times published an article just the other day called Desperately Dry, and they spoke about the Colorado River and Lake Mead. And I'll quote, Lake Mead, which meanders miles into the parched Nevada desert, held back by the Hoover Dam, is drawing closer to the 1,075-foot level, below which officials will declare water emergency and begin rationing water elements to Nevada, Arizona, and California. So, and here we're going to build a lake in Colorado River based on the fact that we're going to use it for irrigation. We need the reservoir for the irrigation. They can build a small reservoir, just like ranchers all around for years have done, and have pressure tanks to do their little agriculture or their watering around the thing. The death of Lake Mead will be a wake-up call to people across the West that we need to boldly address the drought. This is a quote by Howard Watts, a spokesman for the Great Basin Water Network, a nonprofit group composed of environmentalists, ranchers, and Native Americans who seek to preserve the health of the Colorado River. Meanwhile, Lake Mead now resembles a mammoth desert mud puddle evaporating after hard summer rain. Now, there's all kinds of things to do in regards to the lake. They can turn it into a natural desert habitat with nice little trails and yuccas and wadi, and then wait for the 700-year flood or when the drought changes, and then fill it up. And in the meantime, they could use a pressurized water system using the canal water, because that used to be a farmland. They've got all the plumbing all ready for it, and they can water all around the houses with a pressurized system. That using that lake as for a reason to use the water is bogus. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I would like to request the applicant answer a couple questions that Kay Wolf brought up, if somebody can speak to that. Number one, is a 4.7 acre lake needed to get the pressure from the canal water versus the existing use of the current lake in place?
Yeah, I'm going to have my lake expert talk about that.
The answer is no. However, as we stated before, the lake...
No, it's not needed. 4.7 is not needed.
However, the lake serves more than just as an irrigation reservoir. Its most important function is the storage of stormwater. We must hold the 100-year event on this property. So, I wish I could draw for you because I could explain this much better. If we have a very large lake to put that water on top of, then that water is very shallow. If we have a very small lake to put that water on, that same volume, then that's very deep. So if we have deep water, that means the sides have slopes to them, and those slopes are unsafe. So the best solution in terms of the stormwater is to have a very large vessel on which we could put a very shallow amount of stormwater.
So that was the other question, is where does the water go if the lake is full when a flood hits? And this is obviously meeting the current Riverside County requirement of a 100-year storm.
Correct. And the lake is lined, so there's no percolation from the lake. None of the water in the lake goes in the ground. It's reused in irrigation. So if we get a storm here and the water backs up 6 inches in the lake, we'll turn off the CVWD supply and use that for irrigation for some time period, for however long we can use it, before we need to turn on the CVWD water again. So again, the lake serves a lot of purposes, not just irrigation.
Looks like your team wants
I
to
wasn't
answer.
sure if I heard you ask a question about if the lake fills up, what happens to the water?
That was a question by one of the
Our firm designed the Griffin Ranch project, and they were designed conjointly, so that what happens is at the south east corner of the property, it would overflow and then go through the path of travel down through the Griffin, a prearranged path of travel through the Griffin Ranch project. So it's been designed to allow for that overflow, which should happen at some point.
Thank you. And if I could I please, Mark Johnson, would you mind returning to the podium? And I know Lee may have, Lee, I think, reading his mind. And
would you like me to start over with my PowerPoint?
No, not the whole thing, please. Just the part relevant to this particular project and the role CVWD has played through its journey.
Well, first of all, I think we need to describe how the approval process works for any subdivision project, as far as we're concerned. There is a state law that requires any project that has 500 or more homes, or a commercial project that's equivalent to it, it requires the water district to prepare a water supply assessment and verification. So we do that for those types of projects. This particular project didn't meet that threshold. Typically, the project proponent's consultant prepares that water supply assessment with our guidance and eventual approval. And that is used in the CEQA document as part of the CEQA review process. For projects that are less than 500 housing units, we're not required to do that. So when that happens, we go through our normal process, because we get subdivisions that could be 20 units, 100 units, and they're a lot smaller phases this time because of the economy. So when a project is proposed, either the county, if it's in the county, or the city, sends a request to CBWD for comments on the project based on the information at hand. Sometimes it's very early in the project, sometimes it's later on in the project. And we will comment on all the 6 services that we provide: domestic water, wastewater, stormwater, if it's a regional stormwater issue, recycled water, groundwater recharge, and so forth. So in this particular case, I'm sure we received requests for comments from the city, and we commented on all those 6 things. In respect to, and our involvement for this project is from a water resource standpoint. Is there enough water resources available to provide service to the project? And in this case, there is. As I alluded to earlier, we have put in place a water management plan. It's a 35-year plan that takes into account growth. This project is part of that growth. And we have the water resources available, and we're planning for the future to add additional water resources and programs to meet those demands, as I alluded to earlier. So for this particular project, we do, once the project gets moving along, the plans for the domestic water, the sanitation, are sent to us for review and approval. And also, we have a water management department that reviews all the landscape and irrigation demands. And they've done that. In this project, as I mentioned earlier, we have the most stringent landscape ordinance in California. And this project, according to the calculations which we've reviewed and approved, meets our landscape ordinance. And that includes evaporation on that lake. And the calculations I have right here, I can share that with you. The first part of the calculation is determine what the maximum applied water allowance is for the entire parcel. And then they estimate what the water use is based on the plants that they're going to put in and any open surface water that might be on the project, such as this lake. So they have calculated the evaporation of this lake in that calculation. And it meets the maximum allowed water use for that particular piece of property. I also want to comment on the non-potable versus potable issue. One of the reasons why we imported water into the Coachella Valley is because when it was first developed for farming, the aquifer was being mined. And since we've brought in Colorado River water, for the first 30 years we brought it in, there was no overdraft. And as I mentioned earlier, that overdraft has increased a little bit, but we hope by 2021 it will be reversed. So the whole purpose of bringing in alternative water supplies, Colorado River water, State Water Project water, is to make sure we don't bring that aquifer down further, because it has dire consequences if you do. We have had some subsidence in the Coachella Valley, but it's been minor over the last 70 years. If you look up at the Central Valley, the land is subsiding 6 inches a year up there. And in some places it's subsided a total of about 35 feet. So that is one of the tenets of our water management plan, is to make sure that that does not happen. So this project reduces the demand on the aquifer by using Colorado River water for irrigation. So the other thing I wanted to kind of distinguish is, and I'm not trying to make light of this, because we are in a serious situation, as I alluded to earlier, but the governor's order currently goes through February of 2016. Now, I don't know if he knows it's going to rain on that day or what, but it's a short-term situation. Hopefully, he's right, but we're going to keep an eye on it. We have done long-term planning, as we've shown earlier, to make sure we have enough water supply for the Coachella Valley. And as some of the aerial shots I've shown and the applicant has shown, new subdivisions in the Coachella Valley are brown. It's the stuff that happened before 2005, say, back in the 70s and 80s, that we need to correct. And it's going to take a while, because it's green. And that's where the water's going. So this project, according to CBWD standards, meets our landscape ordinance. It achieves one of the goals of our water management plan, because it's using Colorado River water for landscape irrigation. And the other thing I wanted to point out is Colorado River water is regulated by the United States Bureau of Reclamation. It is not a state of California resource, and it does not fall under their jurisdiction. So fortunately, because of the history I showed earlier, CBWD has a very high priority right on the Colorado River. So when Lake Mead hits 1075, Arizona and Nevada have to cut back well before we do. Hopefully we don't get there, but again, CBWD is in a supreme position for water resources in the Coachella Valley. So I just wanted to kind of put some of this in perspective again, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
I have one, so go ahead, John.
A question mark. So you're saying the governor couldn't come down here and confiscate our water?
Not Colorado River water, no. State Water Project water, we're subject to the availability of that water. Between Desert Water Agency and us, we have an entitlement of 194,100 acre-feet per year. Because of some of the environmental issues in the Delta, on average, we get about 60% of that. But I don't, and this year our allocation is 20%. So they have not cut back our allocation based on, typical weather impacts. Initially it started off at 5%, it went up to 20%, and it's staying there. So.
And the reason I asked that is because I was fairly certain that the governor couldn't come down and raid our coffers either, but he did.
Yeah.
So I have very little lack of faith in what they can and can't do when it comes time to either a fiscal emergency in that case, but certainly a water emergency as we're looking at heading into.
Yeah, I'm most confident that our Colorado River supply is not subject to state oversight. Certainly the state could do something different with this state water project, but like I said, we're only getting 20% of our allocation this year anyway. Okay.
Can you speak to the dual piping system that's being proposed?
Yes. That is also a unique feature of this development, and it will be the first project to put in dual piping. Years ago, the Coal Ranch project, when things were hot and heavy, was proposing to do exactly the same, but that hasn't happened. So we're excited about this because you'll have both a domestic water pipeline in the street and a non-potable water pipeline in the street. There'll be 2 meters actually going into each residence, one for the potable water inside and 1 meter with
with proper backflow prevention on each for the outside irrigation. The lake itself, you know, the sizing of it is really up to the engineers for the combination things for stormwater and so forth. But, you know, all of our farms here have irrigation lakes or ponds, whatever you want to call them, because the Colorado River water does have a lot of silt in it. So it's good to have a little buffer to settle out the silt. And as was mentioned earlier, we're bringing that water essentially from the canal at elevation 40 across the Coachella Valley, so it has very little pressure. So it's got enough to fill up a pond, but when you take it out of the pond or lake, there has to be a pressurized system, which there will be for this project. And it also has to be filtered so that the irrigation nozzles don't clog up. And that's how all the farms in the Coachella Valley essentially deliver water to their drip irrigation. So.
Other questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. In regards to the discussions earlier regarding Lake Mead and whatnot, and the drop in the water levels there, and the quantification agreement that's in place at this point in time, is there a level where the federal government would take control of the Colorado River regardless of the quantification agreement?
Well, I guess I'll answer that in two ways. First of all, we have a contract with the federal government for our Colorado River supply. Dates back to 1947, and the second one, excuse me, 1934, and the second was 1947. And in that agreement, I think there's probably a provision that says they can do whatever they want. They've never done that, but
we've never been in this manner of a drought either.
No, not to this degree. But we don't believe, you know, as part of the quantitative settlement agreement, there was a lot of work done amongst all the states that benefit from the Colorado River to come up with this, what they call the shortage criteria. When that reservoir comes down, it's very well planned. It hits that level, and that's when the shortage criteria begins, and certain entities like Arizona and Nevada have to start cutting back. If it keeps going down, there's actually another level. If it keeps going down, there's another level. But we wouldn't have to cut back on our quantity of water until it's a really dire situation. But the commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation could come out tomorrow and say, you know, everybody cut back, whatever. Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was some controversy in the Planning Commission in terms of the end result of the 3-2, and you know, obviously, some of the points that were in the report seem to have been answered through the updated report and discussion. I don't know if anyone from Planning wants to address the discussion in terms of the overall project, or stand based on the questions that were in the staff report and the minutes. Okay, with that, I will officially any closing comments from the applicant or returned speakers? Go ahead, let's call Doug up real quick. Mark, if you can wait.
Go ahead. I was just going to follow up by saying that, you know, my what-if question that I proposed earlier pertains exactly to these last few points that we've made, but I don't think it's a matter of waiting until the federal government or the state government decides that we're going to have less water. I think it's a matter of being forward-thinking and coming up with our own plan that's going to make sure that we can just, you know, do better than actually what we're doing now. And so I think to wait, or just to say that we've got a contract and we can have all the water we want until they say we can't, I think it's going to be better to do something more forward-thinking than that. That's it.
Mark, closing comments.
I've prepared somewhat of a few minutes of a written speech here, but before I start that, I just want to really hone in, as Mr. Osborne said, on apples to apples. So, and what we have here is the existing property today, which uses 100% potable water because they have an on-site well, which is tapped directly into the aquifer. They're using over 23 million gallons of water today. And our project proposes to wean them off that source and obviously wean us onto a non-potable source, of which the estimated 32 to 33 million gallons of water, we'd be using 7.9 million. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention before I say my last few words here. I'd like to address the council properly if I can. Honorable Mayor, members of the council and staff, my name is Mark Major. I am both the developer of this project and also a lead investor. I would like to thank you all for your time and consideration for our project this evening. It's been a long road, to say the least. We've been working with staff over the last 2 years to create the project you see before you. There were many hurdles and constraints along the way, but we overcame each one of them with a lot of diligence, cooperation, and a team effort. The most notable challenge, obviously, being the design of our multi-use water system, that my team has designed and done their best to clearly illustrate our story for water conservation here this evening by giving you all the supporting facts. In this regard, I don't wish to stand here any longer and simply repeat the facts. Instead, I'm asking you to strongly consider them one last time. With your consideration, please be kind enough to recall that our proposed project will save approximately 15.7 million gallons of water annually when compared to the existing water use at the property. That's a 66% reduction in total potable water use, considering the existing estate and pond draws its water from a private on-site well, which pumps directly from the aquifer, as I've mentioned. It's so important to acknowledge that our proposed project only contemplates the use of an incremental 27% of total water for servicing an additional 78 homes. Does that not sound like efficient water use to you? I also ask you to recall that the 88-unit alternative project with no reservoir will not allow for a non-potable irrigation system, thereby causing considerable additional stress on CVWD's potable water resources to the tune of 33.1 million gallons of water annually. I have a tough time understanding why this scenario would even be considered when you have such a great model for water conservation within our proposed 78-unit project. A short while ago, I mentioned that we were able to overcome many challenges along the way. Well, the biggest challenge we faced was at the beginning of our process with CVWD, when we were in the design phase of our site plan and private irrigation system, which now incorporates the first dual pipe system in the water district. There were people that told us it wouldn't work and that there was no design in place that would allow for such a system. We were also told that there were many developers that lined up before us to try and accomplish the same task, but all ended up without success. Well, we're here today, and we've made it work because we're developers who believe that good design is good business, and that bottom line isn't always the most important thing. We've been told here tonight that this is the first project of its kind within all of CVWD. So with that being said, I'm asking the city of La Quinta to embrace it. To use this project as an opportunity to get out in front of the governor's executive order and be able to show the rest of the state and the governor that the city of La Quinta is adapting and has found a way forward in these extraordinary times. I will leave you on that note. Again, thank you for your time and consideration. I'm available for questions.
Any final questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for everybody for your input. I will close the public hearing and the matters before the council for comments. Yes, please.
One question to staff. In regards to the homes themselves and the aspect of residential fire sprinkler systems, I take it these homes don't require that necessity of fire sprinkler systems in these homes? They're small enough where they don't?
We're not sure. My understanding was that all residential construction requires sprinklering, but there may be.
5,000 square feet above, right?
It's a, yeah, my understanding is a 5,000 square foot threshold. I don't, or maybe that changed recently.
Every new residence requires residential fire sprinkler.
So these homes will require residential fire sprinkler systems?
Yes. Yep.
Have you guys discussed using this non-potable water for those sprinkler systems?
No, there hasn't been any discussion relative to its use for that purpose. The applicant may have been considering that, I don't know, but we haven't discussed that.
Laws allow us to do that?
If I may?
Yes, sir.
Please.
No, the residential fire sprinkler requirement came into effect 3-4 years ago. It would be on the domestic water. That we require the developer to size the meter and the service line to be able to handle not only the potable water use, but also the calculated residential fire sprinkler flow. And the way they do that is they calculate the flow at 2 sprinkler heads in the ceiling at the furthest part of the residence. And it usually is about 30 to 35 gallons per minute, which is right on the border of a 3/4 inch to 1 inch meter. So you're, in a lot of cases, because our system is so robust, you're not really even changing the sizing of the meter. Some cases we have to upsize the meter and the service line because of that residential fire sprinkler requirement.
Would they be able to use non-potable water for that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So what you're saying is any home development we approve going forward is going to pull water from the aquifer and will impact, should there be a fire, the 10 CCFs of efficient use on their bill. At that point, if there's a fire, it's kind of irrelevant.
But hopefully, I mean, hopefully we don't have a fire.
No.
And when it does happen, it's for a very short duration. So it's.
Okay, I just didn't know if that could be another use on this water. Okay, thank you.
Comments, questions, final statements? Yes, Christy.
Yeah, I would like to make some comments. In evaluating the current potable water use, if we were to deny or continue this project, that's going to continue. That's coming from the aquifer for this particular, what's there right now. Yes, right?
You mean?
The 23 million, whatever it is, I don't know.
The current estate as it stands.
Yes, as it sits.
It is.
It's not. Well, as it sits right now, it's using water from the aquifer.
A lot.
Yes, it is. If we went with this project, I think that the way I've thought about it is, I guess with the numbers, not so much that it's a water project, but the numbers are, to me, show that we're really decreasing the potable water use, and they're bringing in canal water, which to me is a beautiful project. It's well planned out. They didn't just come in here yesterday, and CBWD says it meets all of their criteria. I think it complements everything that's around it, and we could, of course, continue this until February of 2016. To what avail?
Right.
To what avail? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, we already know what the governor can and might do, but I would completely depend upon Mark Johnson's statement that we do have a contract that we've had in place for a long time with Colorado River Water, and this project using that non-potable water I just think it makes a lot of sense. It's a beautiful project, and I would hope that we'll let it go forward. Comments? Others?
Well, again, the question remains, what happens if the water needs to be diverted? The lake will dry up, right? And there could be at one point that the canal water needs to be diverted to recharge the aquifer. I don't know if it's the case or it's not the case, but the reality that could be, yes, we cannot touch your Colorado water, but you got to divert it to the aquifer. That could be some, I don't know, because again, it is a dynamic situation. What will make me feel comfortable if there was indeed a letter or some sort of agreement with the CVWD that tells us that we are in the clear by proving this, which according to the question I asked of staff, we still don't have a written document from CVWD says that they are in full support beside Mark. Tremendous presentation. Thank you so much. Am I correct? We don't have it?
We do not have correspondence specific to a lake regarding this.
So the correspondence we have is saying that they've met all the requirements of the entire project. Or do we get that from every project, or we just get comments back?
We got a typical response, stormwater and district supply letter from CVWD in October when we sent, October 14, when we sent this out for comment. It didn't mention anything relative to the lake design or anything really related to the lake. It just referenced the 6 areas of service that Mark alluded to earlier for providing sewer, stormwater, domestic water, and those other areas that he mentioned. So we don't have anything on file directly related to the lake, just the overall project review letter that we get, pretty much similar to every project we send to them.
City Attorney, any comment from you?
Well, I suppose I could add a little bit more onto what I said before, other than to the extent CVWD and its board, it sounds like, has not taken any action along the lines that you are talking about. But if they have provided a letter that is what they usually do in the ordinary course, then, and as the representative mentioned, Mark mentioned, it meets their requirements, then they have looked at the project as it was proposed, which presumably included the lake, but there's still nothing, I would say, there's nothing from the board, at least unless I'm missing something from that letter, there's nothing from the board that says that they have approved it.
Again, the concern is that this is the first of this kind of project, and I think that they should have gone a little bit above what they usually do to give us clearance and reassurance that this is what we should be doing. They are the one controlling the water. I mean, can you see my position here? We are faced with making a decision on a source without clarity that source of water will be there. Because, I don't know. It is a little bit like being between a rock and a hard place right now, in this very moment. When 2 weeks from now it could be different with some more documentation from Coachella Valley Water District.
So Wally, basically we've got a very basic will serve letter is basically what we have, correct?
That's correct.
Which all projects are required to get, and we can't proceed without those.
Correct.
So in that sense, they say, yeah, we can have water, or they can have water. To the extent of how much water and how long that tap will be on is probably a different question. For me, this project at the very least would warrant a continuance until we know a little bit more from the governor. I think there was more questions raised here today than I think we had answers to. But beyond that too, I think it behooves us to be very careful how we proceed with this. I think perception is one thing, especially in California right now, I don't certainly want La Quinta to become the poster child for water use in California. We're starting to see that, as one speaker mentioned, in the LA Times, in CNN, various news agencies around the country. Although the project has been developed very nicely, I would not tend to approve anything that has the word lake in it in the desert in the future. It just doesn't seem to make sense at this time in our development process and with the drought that we currently have, although they are going to be saving water in certain cases. I don't know if the estate in the future going forward, having heard what they have tonight, will turn on the spigot of the non-potable water and start to use that for their irrigation needs on the estate. I'm just very cautious and would proceed very cautiously as we proceed with this project. I'd like certain more answers from either the governor's office, at least to hear what the water board has to say. I guess they're meeting next week to see what kind of recommendations they're going to have. I happen to know Merv Griffin back in the day. I sat at his table when he rolled out the plans for the ranch that he was proposing and what he had desired to see around that. It certainly didn't include homes around his estate. So from a personal standpoint, I have a real problem with that. And you know, 78 more homes right next to the homes at Griffin Ranch. I don't think it's, you know, something that we need to look at this point in our development cycle. So I'll be glad to listen some more from my fellow colleagues and see where we go from there.
Lee?
Yes, ma'am. Well, the type of design in regards to the reservoir from an irrigation standpoint has worked very well for the farming industry for many years out here, and to save them water. You know, they've been very good stewards of their water using this type of system. And the drip system that they put in place in the agricultural realm has done very well. So I can appreciate what we're doing here, and I can appreciate the water district's position to say this is what we need to be doing in the future, to be able to have a non-potable source for irrigation. That being said, I don't think we need a 4-acre lake to do this. I think you can cut that lake in half, still accomplish what you're looking at to do from an irrigation standpoint and reservoir standpoint. I don't know. You may need, you know, a retention basin at that point. I don't know if you had to cut this lake in half. But and the numbers speak for themselves from as far as the amount of water. But perception is still a huge issue here. We cannot be blind to the perception in this country regarding this project, and it's a huge problem. When this project goes into the public, the regard of being potable versus non-potable will be in the small print. People won't look at that and to say, oh, look how well you've done from an irrigation standpoint to minimize potable water usage. And I was here as well when Merv Griffin was sitting on this front row talking about his project and how he envisioned it, but times have changed, unfortunately, and the equestrian development that he had intended, you know, hasn't really worked at all. But I am really, really struggling with this project from a perception standpoint. I mean, honestly, that's where it is. The numbers speak for themselves as far as the water usage. The amount of evaporation that we're going to lose on this project is a big number. I think, again, you could have done it with half the size. And maybe cutting this lake in half might have been a thing to do 2 months ago, but you guys have been working on this for a number of years, at least 2 years, maybe longer. And the challenge that we've had in the last 30 days weren't around 2 years ago. And so it's all been something just extremely recent. I can appreciate the water district's position, and I respect the water district's position. They are the purveyor of water. They are the ones to tell us what we can and cannot do. If someone were to come down on this project and we could say, well, the water district told us we could, I don't think that's going to save the city of La Quinta from a black eye in regards to the public's perception of this project. So I am struggling. I don't know what a continuance would do for us. I really don't. It is a very dynamic position right now, as was stated, Robert. I think these things are going to be changing quite often. I don't think this drought is going to be ending anytime soon. And so whether it's a drastic 36% now, could it get worse? Yes. And if it does get worse, will that affect this property? Probably will. But I do like the language you guys have put together, that we must follow the rules as given to us. And if they change, then the rules will change that this project must accompany or follow. So I appreciate the wording you guys have provided here, and I don't know if this wording has been approved with the developer as well. If you guys have approved it as well. Okay. So a year ago today, it'd have been an easier decision. But today, with the country watching us and the state of California watching us as they are, I'm really struggling with this project. Knowing the numbers, I still don't think you need a reservoir this size. You could certainly cut it in half and make it work to still do what you're looking to do from an irrigation standpoint. Retention, I don't know. That's my indecision at this point in time.
If I may follow up, The issue of farming versus this multi-purpose lake, which has a recreational aspect to it. Farming is creates nourishment and food for our people, for our citizens, creates economic activity, and this one is different in a sense, although I understand the concept behind. Again, will it continue the item for till the next meeting or a month from now? Would it provide us more information? Would we see how the dynamic is changing? How is it settling in? I think it would. And frankly, I would be much more comfortable for the sake of the city of La Quinta and for the future owners of these properties to have in place some sort of understanding above what we receive from Coachella Valley Water District, telling us this is what basically we were told today, but in writing, in some sort of a legal document that says, well, we need it because we also can take back the water. I don't know, but there got to be a little bit more depth to this.
I doubt that the water district would give us that letter. And that would be up to Mr. Barrett and his board. I don't know that they would. I could obviously be wrong, Mark, and I don't know that he can give us direction in that, but.
Mark, would it be possible, could you please come up if I may?
We're close to public hearing, but is this to answer a question, Bill?
Actually, you can always reopen the public hearing. I mean, we're still on the matter item, and if you are going to go the direction of a continuance, I would recommend a reopening.
That has not been decided.
Okay.
Been commented. So do I have to reopen to have Mark speak?
Yes, I would.
We're reopening the public hearing. Come on up, Mark.
Would you like me to start with my PowerPoint?
Please do.
Earlier I tried to describe the approval process for projects from a water resource standpoint. There is state law that says if it's 500 units or higher, we must prepare a water supply assessment and verification, and we do that. They pick 500 units for some reason. If it's below that, we go through the normal process at CBWD. And I would have to check with our legal counsel to see whether or not we could write a letter beyond what we do every day to all the cities and counties regarding this issue. I don't think it'll be a problem, but I can't guarantee that because I don't have legal counsel with me today. The bottom line is, though, when the project proponent begins to submit plans for approval, one of the key items is they have to submit to us for our approval the water management plan, maximum allowance for the property, and what the estimated use is. And that's the piece of paper I had earlier. They've already done that. And from a water resource perspective, water management perspective, that project meets our landscape ordinance 1302.1, which is the most stringent landscape ordinance in the state of California. And it includes their evaporation from the lake. So I don't know if that's good enough for you, but I'll have to check with legal counsel if we can write a letter beyond what we normally do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I can, maybe Councilmember Rowley, just to clarify, I know we've talked about letter versus agreement. There were some other language. Are you?
I'm looking for some. Here's what we have presented. This is new. Nothing wrong with new, right? But then we're gonna apply just what we always do. And I like to say, well, if this is new, let's get a better understanding. Because again, my concern is that we are gonna build this, we're gonna have homes, and then for some reason, this Colorado River cannot be supplied to this lake, and now we have 78 people marching up in here saying, you approve this. And it can be whenever. And we have to say, with the evidences that we had at the time, yes, we did approve it, because Coachella Valley Water District made these recommendations. I'm not sure that we have it. And if we do, please tell me that we do.
Again, my understanding is we don't have, it sounds like what you're looking towards, and it sounds like you may be leaning more towards an agreement of some sort, which would certainly need
some
to be
sort of
about.
understanding, some sort of, I'm not going to call it agreement, I'm not going to call it letter, some sort of an understanding, an in-writing understanding.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
We're open, come on up.
I'd actually like to call my attorney up, if I may, Mike Titus.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Michael Titus. I'm a land use lawyer at Jackson, DeMarco, Titus, and Peckinpah. What you're facing today is being faced by all sorts of communities all over the state. The issue, I think, that the council member is concerned about is, will the water district have water to serve? And as you look at the website for the Coachella Valley Water District and you hear them talk, they've got a many-year plan. The amount of water this project uses is literally people on the hundreds and millions of acre feet of water they have. So the Colorado River water issue, as he explained, is that they are high priority. How do I know that? Well, my firm, myself, represented the County of Imperial and the County of Imperial's Air Quality District in the quantification settlement agreement litigation. And when you look at the litigation, there's 4.4 million acre feet of water that comes off the Colorado River that's guaranteed. And they have a very high priority. You're going to lose water in a lot of different areas before it would affect this particular stream of water. In other words, they're not going to be the first people who are going to come in there complaining. You lose water in different areas long before they get to that area. They've got very high priority, especially in Colorado River. On the other hand, if you don't do anything, you're going to be pushing all those million gallons of water out of the aquifer for just the current estate. And of course, they have the other property, which they could use for any type of purposes while they're waiting for an approval. And they have a right to pull that out of the aquifer. All right? So you're using potable water in an aquifer that they really want to preserve, as opposed to using Colorado River water where they have a real high priority. And dealing with the comment on the size of the lake, I think you should turn to the attention of our engineer. If you make the lake small, remember we have to have detention basins for the 100-year flood. You don't want to, if you make it smaller, it gets deeper. You get wider, you get bigger. And that deals with the slopes on the side. It also deals with, we need to have a desilting basin. 2 acres is not going to be enough to have all the water get in there, desilt out, and then pressurize. Canal water is a rough water to use, and this is the first creative use of it that I've seen that is really just what I would consider best of all possible worlds. And yes, Councilman Osborne, you're right. It's just a perception problem. The press is here tonight. It's the headline. And the headline should read, City of La Quinta institutes the model project that the Water District recommends. And that should be the headline. Will it be the headline? I don't know. I'm not writing it. But that is in reality what it should say. And I think that if you use this project as your model, you're sending a message that you're willing to stand up and do what's right. And yeah, I understand your concern. I mean, the councilman, you're correct. There's always a risk. But what happens is, and I think the Water District representative was trying to explain, when you have a large subdivision, you have to get a plan ahead of time. Our small subdivision, you don't have to because it's a small water use compared to their total. But we did anyway. All right? But when you go, once you get your approvals here, it doesn't end. You have to go to the Water District and you have to present all the plans, you have to do the final engineering, and if they have water to serve, they have water to serve. And their plan goes out for decades, not a year or two. Now, let's back up a second, and I hope your city attorney will back me up in this. Right now, the state water order really only deals with non-agricultural water that is potable and asks them to reduce the per capita use of the water in the different districts. How is that important? Well, the per capita use of potable water of this project is far below than anything else in the city. Certainly far below the estate, which is basically one estate using all that potable water. That's what the state's trying to do. They're not trying to stop development. They're trying to encourage the per capita use go down. And that's because there are water districts in this state that use more water per capita than even La Quinta, Beverly Hills, for example. All right? That's where you're going to get the real effort. Now, I can go on for hours on this. I'm the land use lawyer. I have to deal with this all the time. And this is not the first drought I've lived through. All right? This drought has been, this issue has been coming up for months. It may be new to council members, but to land use lawyers, the state water resources agency issued a 5% on state water in January. So we knew that this was coming. So everybody in the water arena, especially the water districts, have been acting proactively for months. And I think if you talk to the water district, they'll tell you, this isn't something that came up, and he knew what he was doing. He'd been planning this for months, years. And I think we need to respect that. It's the water district that's supplying the water. If they say they can do it, I think the city should respect it. Because if you say no, then the water district has a bunch of other cities who are going to say, well, wait a minute, why did La Quinta say no? And that's, I think, an important consideration. It isn't just the optics through the press, but the optics of the other cities looking at water district water and the other entitlements. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and as for the other issue, legal issue about an agreement.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If I may say, and I understand there is risk in everything, but where I'm sitting here, it is my duty to mitigate the risk for the city. All I'm asking, I don't even have an issue with the size of the lake, but I'm asking for it, since we are the first project of this kind, I'm asking for some more documentation from our Department of Water that gives us a little bit more comfort, irrespectively of the perception, given that we are in a dynamic situation.
And there are 4 points I'd like to raise to that. The first is, when they do a will serve letter, that's telling you that they have the water. 2, when they come to the hearing tonight, and this is being recorded, they're making representations to you that they have the water to serve this project forever. Doesn't stop there. 3, you have a condition of approval on our project that you just asked us to look at, which says that if something changes in the future, we have to abide by whatever that change is. 4th, all right, we're not done. We have to do our final engineering and go back to the water district. So they're going to have another look at this in the future. If they don't feel they can serve us, they don't have to. All right? But if they do, they will. That's the protection cities have. Some cities, for example, my firm represents the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. All right? Some cities have whole departments whose job is to allocate it out, and so they don't worry about that risk. So really, the risk to the city is de minimis because you're relying on the water district to supply the water. All right? If they're telling you they can do it, how is the city supposed to substitute its expertise with the water district? That's the water district's job. It's like sewer. Now, they say they have sewer capacity. What if they don't? Well, is that a city problem? Well, no, they told you that they have sewer capacity. They do. So I really do respect it because I deal with this in cities and counties up and down the state, from Pismo Beach, San Luis Obispo, down San Diego. I've seen this issue addressed hundreds of times, and they're all concerned. But we need to understand that the water districts are all aware of it. And I think that's, the comfort you're going to get. A letter from them saying what I just said isn't going to increase your comfort level because they've already said it. They said it verbally here. They're going to say it later on when they do the approvals. They said it in the will serve letter. So I'm not sure you get a lot of bang for the buck by having the letter and continuing it. But I will caution you, say that right now we're going to be using a lot of aquifer water. And that is absolute. And that is 100% going to be used. And that's what they're trying to prevent. They want us to stop using the aquifer water and putting stress on the aquifer. This is the best way to do it.
So immediately tonight you will stop using aquifer water?
You can't turn off the spigot immediately because you still have to get the...
So I don't see how 2 weeks is going to change anything on the use of the water in the pond or lake or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to be very reasonable here, and I understand your point of view. And I don't know if Bill, does the testimony that was provided by the representative from the Coachella Valley Water District tonight serves as a legal confirmation of my concerns?
It would serve, their oral testimony is evidence that they have affirmatively said they can serve this project as proposed. What it is not is a legally binding document or agreement that if something were to happen that would result in less water being allocated for whatever reason, there would be some kind of agreement as to what the city and the water district or the developer would do for that matter.
Paul?
Your comment about this being a new way of approaching this, keep in mind that it is the developer's intent to use the canal water and you want to put it in the lake, but the existing well will probably remain as a backup source should it ever be needed, as well as the existing domestic in the street next to it. So that lake will not be dry. It's just a question of whether or not this project would have to function like any other project in the valley at some point temporarily. So it's not like you're relying on this. There's two other sources of water that are right there as backup to this should they be needed. And then just to reiterate again, this isn't a choice between not using water or using water. Any option you choose is to use water, and very close to the same amount of water. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is that, the ultimate solution to this might be a moratorium. Maybe that's the way to just stop development entirely within the valley, and then the problem goes away. But we all know what that felt like, because a few years ago we went through that where there was no building here. So I don't think the state's going to get to that point. But I mean, if we were to follow this through to the final conclusion of that logic, that's where we'd be. And I don't think that's where we are. So just a few things to consider on that. But this is not so novel that there aren't other sources available as backup should that not be available for a short period of time.
Okay, we're going to try to wrap up. Come on up, Kay.
I don't want the suits to outweigh the rest of us. I think there's a reason for a continuance of this. You're asking what good would a continuance do? A continuance would be an opportunity to answer the questions that you have, and seek a compromise. I think this is a wonderful project. I think purple pipes are terrific. I just think it's out of proportion with the image of what we're trying to project for our city and for the Southern California desert. I'll bet that if these intelligent people put their minds to it, they could make that lake a little smaller, deeper, pump a little water, do some things. But I'll bet if everybody put their minds to it, they could find a compromise. And I just would like to say one more thing. If we think that the city of Las Vegas is going to roll over and play dead when they turn their spigots off, then I think we better think twice. But continue, compromise.
I'm sorry, I'm not wearing a suit, so if you don't mind, I'd like one last comment. In regards to the minimum size of the lake, it must be where it is today. And that's because from the beginning, since conceptual planning, 2 years ago, we walked into this thing with development constraints across the board. More specifically, it was objective number one to maintain the estate. The estate must be maintained at its fixed elevation as a fixed monument, whereby the property is surrounded by 4 basically high walls that also act as retaining walls, and we must drain to the southeast of the site. The whole northwest part of the site sits a lot higher. So while working through the site plan and going through the city code and working on maintaining various things like minimum difference in pad elevation across the site, we need the reservoir/lake to be at that level because we need to be able to capture the 100-year storm event and still maintain that minimum 1-foot buffer between the top of the water, the 100-year water surface elevation of the 100-year event, and the lowest pad. And because of all those constraints, that's why the reservoir needs to be the size it is today. Again, with the number one objective being preservation of the estate property. If the estate wasn't there, we wouldn't have a lot of those constraints to work with. Meaning if the estate wasn't there, it wouldn't be so challenging in designing the site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm closing the public hearing again. Yes. And I haven't had an opportunity to have my comments, but if you would like to.
Just one more comment, because it's not about stopping development. tonight. It's not, my comments are not about the quality of the project. It's lovely, and the architecture is definitely high-end, is beautiful. It is about getting clarity and moving forward with the confidence there is if this is what actually the Department of thank you, Coachella Valley Water District is looking for. I'd like to see a little bit more of an understanding and a partnership in this. So it's not about stopping development.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and additional comments and rebuttals and additionals. If this project came to us even 2 months ago, we would be approving this project on the basis that, A, it's zoned for homes. It's not zoned for anything else because our general plan described it as such to complement the rest of the communities. Because it meets the high quality standards of the architect and design and flow, and it's not just straight streets and boxes, because we've sent projects back like that when they didn't look right in the area that they're sitting. And we would be commending the developer for transitioning and going as a leader to take this off the aquifer at 23 million gallons a year and putting it on what now is the new mandate. So 2 months ago, we would have been the stewards and the leaders and the trendsetters of this is the only project in CVWD's district to do this type of system. I still think that's the message that we need to look at. We don't want to stop growth. Our own Civic Center Park is pulling off the aquifer right now. Is that correct? Okay, so is that the headline? And are we going to turn the spigot off tomorrow and look at becoming, you know, well, giant sand trap? I think that we are extremely conscious of the perception of what La Quinta represents and how we go to the next level as a community, because we've embraced the dark skies, lack of building on the mountains. We've looked at our projects very closely with high quality to make sure that they fit in the vision of La Quinta. And I'm excited about this. Does the perception issue concern me? Absolutely. There's no question. And that's the education piece. This is no different than the sales tax revenue / financial committee. It's how we're educating our decisions, you know, based on the facts. We've got the director of engineering from CVWD, who is a commissioner, who is a vested resident here, an active user. It almost looks like, what is Silver Rock's discussion going to look like then? Because we don't know what the governor is going to say or do next. I appreciate the desire for guarantees. If we had developers come to us saying, you have to guarantee to me that redevelopment money will be there forever, no matter what, we would have lost that battle, and that's gone. I guess I look at it as it meets the requirements, it meets the ordinance. This is above and beyond. How do we maximize the creativity that's been brought forward to put this on the headlines, Sherry, as taking a step ahead of the governor and saying this is what we're going to do and this is going to become the new norm, and challenge the next developer that comes. Because you know what? We've got a project coming back to us in a couple of months or another month and a half. Should we ask where that water's coming from? We should. And we should be asking that for every question. They have made a huge difference with this project. And quite honestly, if the mandate's only until February 2016, it's highly probable that if this gets approved, because I don't support a continuance, that there's nothing that's going to be built on there perhaps before 2016 in February. I mean, we have to look then, is it the desire? Is there a demand? What does that seasonal housing market look like? Does it, and we've got the steps in place to go through another round of approvals, to have wording that helps support. If the governor changes his rules, then this project has to flow with it. There are safeguards in place that protect us when we have to relinquish the water power to the water company. So while I respect every opinion that's been stated, as well as the comments of saying it's irresponsible and it's foolish and how can we do this, I also look at what Michelle said and said, how do we take this and be a leader of the community? How do we set the standard saying, we're not just going out there saying, we cut our fountain, we stopped our fountains, you know, we're only watering at nighttime. We're doing all the we've been doing those things in a lot of areas. Between our hotels and our restaurants and asking for order, we're doing those things. That's not enough. This is a major stake in the ground of saying, this is the first time we're taking a huge step to saying we're doing the right thing now. So I do not support a continuance. I would like to see this move forward, knowing that there are so many next steps that have to be done, that there is an opportunity that if something changes, they will have to modify the plan to accommodate. But it is a beautiful property, and there's already 2.1 acres of water there that's been sucking up the aquifer because we love the house that's there and the person who built it, and we want to preserve that, not as a historic monument, because it's an attraction for our city, and the entire development can be an additional attraction for growth. That's where I stand. So with that.
Common sense, it is a specific plan, and they are retaining the estate. Where will parking be for subsequent uses? Have we identified that?
Are you referring to
to
the events that will take place there, or I'm not sure what you mean by subsequent uses?
Well, to parties that will be at the Griffin Estate. I mean, they're still going to retain that use.
Right.
Correct.
Parking primarily is going to be on site. I believe they were going to use, maybe Mark can speak to how, it's going to depend on the event type. They're not obviously not going to be parking on 54 or on, they are going to shuttle people in, I believe, for certain larger events. But I'll let Mark or Paul talk to that.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe if I could expand upon that.
Thank you, though.
There's the exhibit's not up there for the audience, but I don't know if I can get back to that. No, it's on something else now. I don't know what happened. But if you look on the one that's up on your screen, there's the green area that represents the Griffin Estate.
Correct.
There's a lot of green just to the north of Merv Griffin's estate up to the wall. Those are old paddock corral areas. That's now been converted. It's all turf open right now. If you've been out there recently, that would serve as part of the area that they could stage vehicles for parking in that area. It's certainly going to be a matter of each event having to look at that. There's quite a few vehicles you could establish there, but if it was a larger event or venue, such as what occurred here a few weeks ago, one of the Coachella weekends, they may have to look at an off-site location and bus people in and out. But those are matters that we would have to be looking at with those events as they come in for consideration. But most events could be handled on-site with what they've been proposing here.
Okay. And without going back and looking at my notes, what are the width of the interior streets?
36 feet.
36, so it allows for parking on both sides there.
Okay. What's our direction?
Well, Madam Mayor, with all that being said, I will make a motion then.
Yes.
So basically, what we have in front of us is it a beautiful project which may have we may have clearance from what we heard tonight,
We didn't talk about
or a 88 ugly truck. So that's basically where we are at. Because the 88 homes are really not attractive at all. So I just want to make sure we make that comment because nobody commented on the alternative. They were given three options: do nothing, this project, or 88 homes in a
potential for 88.
And that's still sucking from the aquifer.
Exactly, exactly.
So that's not even
Okay, so
in the cards. Thank you.
just want to make sure that.
Lee.
Then I will make a motion to approve resolution 2015-015, a resolution of the City Council of the City of La Quinta, California, certifying a mitigated negative deck of environmental impact and associated mitigation monitoring program, and approving a specific plan, tentative parcel map, tentative tract map, and site development permit for the estates at Griffin Lake. Case number environmental assessment 2014-1001, specific plan 2014-1001, amendment number 1-SP 2004-074, tentative parcel map 2014-1001, tentative tract map 2014-1001, site development permit 2014-1003, applicant Griffin Ranch Investors LP.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Please vote.
Question. Does that include the revised language? I don't think that was.
Could we make clarification?
Can you?
With the revised language as added by staff this evening.
Second.
There's a motion and second as revised. Please vote. Motion passes 4-1 with Pena voting no. Sherry, we're counting on you. Be a trendsetter. Be a leader.
Good headlines.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to please ask to be excused. I'm fading fast here, and I'm going to drop on the table here in a moment.
Yes,
So-
and get rest, and we hope you feel better. Thank you for hanging with us.
Could we continue that's going to be the longest.
The logo?
Yeah.
I would like to, yeah, I agree. We're so excited. We have so much to say, Tustin, that we are going to table.
That's okay by us. We know you're
Table
just
the
going
logo
through it.
brand study session to the next meeting. All right, let me find my agenda so we can get back. And we're here to make the tough decisions, and we're here to represent, and it's not easy. Okay. So with that, we will go to reports and informational items. Christy? I'd love for you to go first while I pull up my notes. Yeah, let's go with speed committee reporting.
Right.
We're doing speed rounds. Okay, I'm not giving you mints anymore, gentlemen.
Okay, sunlight. The last meeting that we had, our GM gave a review of goals and priorities that were set for her by the board, and how she achieved those. Organizational assessment, actions, results of that. It was an incredible presentation by her. She's a very dynamic woman. She's in charge. She's smart. She has a great track record in transit. And this was her year in review.
Wow.
And so then we were required, or asked to do a written evaluation of hers. And she is sort of doing some of the things that we've done with performance management, trying to change a culture. And there's a little bit of an uphill battle going on there because it, of course, does not happen overnight. We had a lot of discussion about Uber and what went on with Coachella and Stagecoach and how they're unregulated, and hopefully some regulation will come down soon with respect to them, because there are a lot of safety issues. So I saw this video that was sent by one of the Sunlight employees to me, and it talks about how the Uber drivers are so well vetted. Wrong, no, not at all. So anyway, that was basically what's been going on there. There's a lot of graphs and so forth, but Sunlight's clicking along, and she's just doing an absolutely great job. There's an article here by Daniel Borenstein, which says the Obama administration punishes Governor Brown for pension changes. And they are holding up $3 million in PEPRA funds that go to Sunlight. And Department of Labor has already okayed it, and a judge, a Supreme Court, not Supreme Court, but the California Supreme Court judge has said you must release the funds, and they aren't. So we're $3 million behind the gun on that one. And then I had the the Jacqueline Cochran Airport Authority meeting. They're usually very short because there's not a whole lot going on when we're not having a, our air show. I was elected to chair it for the 3rd year in a row.
Congratulations.
Well, you know, what can I say? I mean, it's pretty easy. So anyway, we just talked about the air show and the fact that there won't be one this year. It'll be in Hemet instead of here. And then we went over our finances, which were just fine. And we talked a little bit about Bermuda Dunes and what's going on with the airport there. And it doesn't even come close to penciling out for anybody to want to be a part of, to buy it.
Right.
Cities.
Not gonna buy it then?
Well,
No.
but Benoit gave an update at CVAC.
Yeah.
Executive basically saying that the valuation that came through wasn't anywhere near what the family was looking for, so.
Oh, no, they weren't even.
That Eagle, that plane landed permanently, I think.
So again, there's a lot going on over there. The new terminal building is allegedly under construction, which will be great because they have a ton of people coming through there, especially during the season. And that would be it. Is that short enough? That's good.
It's very good.
Okay.
I'm excited to see the Sunline presentation on her at some point.
All right.
John?
I keep it.
No report, Madam Mayor.
No report. Okay. Lee?
No report as well.
All right, Robert.
All right.
Get there 2 minutes.
That was only going to take 15 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Riverside County Transportation Committee, the item to report on was the certification of the final environmental impact report for the Mid-County Parkway that took 16 miles, took 16 years to get to this point. And so the environmental report was certified and the project was approved. Obviously, there were several emails against the project, and it will connect San Jacinto to Paris. And of course, as any of these type of project, there is some eminent domain issues with homes and businesses having to be relocated. So, but that passed, and that is the only item worthy of note. I will go with the homeless committee. CVAC homeless, there was the point in time homeless count where La Quinta shows 10, a count of 10, which, if you look at a face value, is an increase from 2013. However, in 2013, they did a count with what they call red zones, which means there are no homeless there, don't go there and count. So very likely they were missed in 2013, so we don't quite have an increase. Is more or less that they weren't counted the first time around.
And you know what? It's always a snapshot.
It's a snapshot, and there was a very in-depth discussion about it. It's like it's a point in time. It is mandated by HUD, so the parameters, the questions, the questionnaire, everything is designed by HUD for the funds that then is distributed at the county level. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to know about, but that's the short version.
Good.
CVEP, that was before that one. Basically, what I'd like to say is that they are on track to balance out their budget for the year. They were saying that with $600,000 they would be able to stabilize and right-size the organization and then move into the future with some new vision.
How are they going to get that? Did they say?
Well, with here some of their, well, first of all, they did lose some contribution, totally $95,000 since the last meeting, and $50,000 loss was from IID, which we're not going to put money toward that. The other aspect, so how they're going to get there they're doing the budget for next year, hoping that everybody's going to come in with pledges or what they perceive to be a pledge, because here they have La Quinta down for $50,000, so which we didn't even discuss yet. Furthermore, one of the best questions that were asked by Patrick Swarthout, and he asked, do we have the money to hire a CEO? Because you have Joe Wallace going half on this side and half on this side, half on what they call now CVEP Central and half in the high accelerator, and the answer was clear. No, we don't have the money to hire a CEO. So how are you going to restructure a company without putting a CEO on board full-time? That's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So that's something that we'll have to discuss further among ourselves and at budget time, what we can do. Last observation. There is
so Robert, on that,
yes,
they discuss if the cities don't pony up what they're projecting, what happens?
Well, of course, there's going to be, they will have to shrink. Yeah, that's the bottom line. There's a list of projected pledges. City of Palm Desert advanced the money for 15-16. They already paid the $50,000, for example. So some are stepping up, some are not. But eventually, if the money is not there, they will have to, more the right size, they will have to downsize. Well, CVEC transportation, I had a little bit more prepared, but I'll just keep it short.
Okay.
Tonight we discussed a lot of things, right? And it was a long meeting. And I think that it's important for elected bodies to discuss items. So imagine my surprise when we get there and we are supposed to finally discuss for the first time the cost of maintaining the CV link. And a motion was made to table and continue the item. I didn't know that you can continue a discussion. But so there were opposing views to that from Council Member Jen Harnick, Supervisor Benoit, and myself. That know what I said today is the day to start talking about this because we have kicked down the issue long enough. So the discussion was about the potential cost of maintaining CV Link in its entirety. They started out with $1.6 million, which includes 10 rangers. 10 full-time rangers, right? Which is a little bit over the top there. So it was calculated down in about $30,000 per mile, right? And our very own Edie Hilton came down and made a tremendous presentation about our own trail, Bear Creek Trail, their cost, how we maintain it, and then
$25,000 a year.
Well, it's a bit higher than that, actually. But the payment, if you look at the pavement itself, is $10,000 per miles, right?
So 30.
So 30 total. So there were numbers that were presented for the Santa Ana River Trail. Some section is $9,000 a year per mile. And then was brought in this American River Project up north, where this thing is humongous, parks, many acres. I'm not going to go through all the details, but so the invitation from the staff was, let's compare apple to apple. Let's make sure that we are looking at what CV Link looks like is concrete. Here's the design, and that's what you see most of the time. So the discussion occurred, which is the, as I called it, the first step in a 1,000-mile journey, and at least we start having that discussion. No decision was made. An elected official from the great city of Rancho Mirage took on public comment, and it went a little long until someone else said enough, and it was stopped. So
let me guess who that was.
Same one
So,
that has a binder at CVEC.
Yeah, we didn't get the binder though. And I feel a little bit on the good side though, because this is good news. The Federal Railroad Administration did put up a $3 million grant for our Coachella Valley train. And that, the idea behind the grant is to shorten the time from 7 years to 4 years, so that certain milestone could be achieved faster. So I thought that was good news. What else? I think 1, 2, 3. No, the chamber, I have it on May 12th.
When do we switch that?
That will be, it's 6 months.
Oh, 6
so
months.
the next one will be Councilmember Horstman, which will be
If we
in...
decide that will be the rotation.
Well, he said that he's ready to go. So, yeah, that's coming up, and I think that's it.
Quick question, was there a East Valley Coalition or E-Veg meeting?
There was a meeting, but I was not able to attend. Our staff was there, and basically they had a meeting with Supervisor Benoit and the staff of Indio, and Elaine Holmes, I believe, was there as well. So they're going to continue putting this program together. Mr. Weber with the City of Coachella was there saying that the City of Coachella may not be a member.
Oh.
They don't see a benefit for the City of Coachella in this group.
Fascinating.
And they think that what happens with
Quinta,
CVAP is going to happen with this East Valley, which
Go
is
back to see.
crazy. But that's all I know at this point in time. Chris isn't here.
Okay.
So
Right, and they're going to continue moving
we'll
forward.
have another meeting here later this month, I believe, is on the calendar, so I'll know more.
Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, then I'll do the abridged version. Let's start with CVCC. The telling part is really an update that Katie provided on the La Quinta fence and the bighorn sheep. Our studies and reports will continue. We did submit a letter to the Fish and Wildlife asking for some opportunities for solutions. They said yes to some and no to others, but there's still information being gathered. From an energy environmental, the biggest thing is looking at our goals and objectives, which will be brought back. I was on a subcommittee for that. The next meeting, and a large contingency of getting better metrics and measurable results, especially in terms of the Salton Sea and our role, because it just says support the restoration and or maintenance of. So it's like, what does that mean and how do we quantify it? CVAG was largely about the CV Link project, and yes, the same Rancho Mirage council member who sits on that committee, who's now the mayor, Dana, was concerned about the CV Link O&M costs, operating maintenance costs, and as you discussed, and developed a binder for everybody in the room and read a 4-page document, and it was lengthy, and it ended up getting approved. So, and we're going to continue those discussions because we need more specifics. But
and Jan's still the chair.
And Jan's still the chair because they tried to rescind the chair and vice chair, and that was voted down, and it was an interesting meeting. So we're moving forward. There was even a question, Bill, you'll like this, that there was just a report that was a receive and file on the consent calendar. And he questioned what happens if we don't approve the receive and file. Does it not get filed? Does it stay on the agenda? Nobody knew. The attorney for CVAC didn't know and has never seen it happen that way. That was the level of discussion we were at an executive committee. Just so you know. Thank you, Edie, for attending, says Frank was on vacation. The fun part of one of my committees is the Coachella Valley, the CVB, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and you probably read in the news, they did a press conference on the study that was commissioned by CVB on the impact of tourism on the Salton Sea if nothing's done. Again, it'll destroy not only our tourism and hospitality, but it'll destroy a large part of Southern California. So how can we help, and how do we get behind an initiative, and how can we engage and educate our residents? That's through the Salton Sea license plate program. We need 7,500. They got 2,500 signatures to get this done, but now you've got to get 7,500 actual plates and checks written to reserve this. So I've provided each of you with the study, as well as the simple way to write a check and send it in and put your plate on reservation for the Salton Sea logo. And that way, at least Supervisor Benoit and the other legislative entities will have a voice going to Sacramento or wherever, saying that at least this community is behind it and this is a show of good faith. So that's good. Also, CVB Oasis Awards is tomorrow, and that's the opportunity where we recognize all of the frontline folks in the front and back line for all the hospitality industry in the Valley, and it's a huge award ceremony, and they have a great time, and that's happening at Desert Springs Marriott tomorrow night. And I think, SCAG. So we've got the SCAG Regional Conference and General Assembly on Thursday and Friday, so I'll be in Palm Desert representing the city of La Quinta for that. Not a ton on the agenda that's relevant. It's stuff that's kind of come up from the league, so I'll report back on it and what decisions were made. And
we have a league meeting next week.
We have a league meeting at the Sunlands.
Yeah.
Yes, that'll
And
be
a
exciting
tour,
for the
if you're
tour.
gonna do the tour.
Yes, the tour.
Cool.
And that would be that would be my report. So any director reports, Bill? Anything to report?
Nothing other than we're monitoring, obviously, the water regs and also monitoring the TOT issue because there is pending legislation up
Yes,
there.
there is.
And I will be attending the League of California City Attorney Conference starting tomorrow evening.
And where's that?
Monterey.
Oh, okay. Not easy to get to, but I do want to commend, I guess, Susan on our new calendar for commissions. It's very nicely done and easy to read, and it's a nice format, so I appreciate that.
Very good.
Thank you.
If you have any suggestions, Teresa and Kim worked on that,
Okay.
trying to divine what would work for all of you, so if you'd like anything different or set up differently, just let us know.
Kudos to them. It's a nice look. Okay, with that, I don't think we have any other business to discuss. Oh, mayor and council items?
I've got some, but it'll wait.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote. Do we need to go again? Oh, motion passes unanimously. There is still time for a Cinco de Mayo margarita.